Hail and well met, readers and reviewers, slayers of giants. Welcome to Tilting at Windmills. And also, we've got two shows going on simultaneously here. This is also the Breaking Brick show with Neil Bonas. So this is very cool. And if you are already a subscriber to Breaking Bricks, you know that show and that channel. And if you're a subscriber to my channel, you should be subscribing to Breaking Bricks. So this is a good way for our folks who like Lego and like Star Wars, or just like Star Wars, or just like Lego, or are just interested in this whole bricks and minifigs, kerfuffle, fiasco, crisis, story, drama, can follow both channels and keep up on kind of what's been going on. So Neil and I met at Brick World, the conference in Chicago. And Neil, you go to, so Neil is a incredible Lego builder and Star Wars fan, and right away I was like, oh, okay, we like the same stuff. So we decided, hey, this would be good to connect. So, but this is not your first conference. You've been going to a ton of these things, and you do a lot of them in the region, right?
Within my region. I'm here in Ohio, so originally there's not a lot here. We had Brickfest Live that started showing up a couple years back, and that's kind of where I started with the conventions. So for me, I would do a build, I would go do a Brickfest Live show, and then I would bring it home, tear it apart, and then do something else. And the whole time I'm trying to build this YouTube channel.
Yeah. And how did you get started doing these? Was it the massive builds first, and then the YouTube channel, or did those happen at the same time? How did that come about?
Well, it actually kind of started with the music scene, believe it or not. I was a musician for 35 years, and I decided to retire. My wife got tired of me coming home brokenhearted, because it costs you time, money, all the effort you put into stuff, the rehearsals. I put a lot of work and time into that. So, yeah, when something would happen, I would come home brokenhearted, because it's kind of like a marriage in a lot of ways. And she was tired of that. And in a lot of ways, I was too. I'm getting older in life. And I decided to get back into collecting. And I've always been a Star Wars fan. Always, since 1977. So yeah. I'm sorry I had to put an age on myself there. But so I've seen The New Hope 100 times in the movie theater when it came out. Yep. I've seen Empire Strikes Back. I saw Return of the Jedi. And that was it. We didn't have nothing. So, I got this Darth Vader 12-inch figure, and in the cover you read about this awesome duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan on the banks of Mustafar. And then we finally got to see it. And when I retired from music, I was like, I wanted to get back into Star Wars. So I collected Lego because you had chips, you had figs, and it was all in line, all separate. And so I started collecting and filling shelves. Army building.
Yeah.
Now you have a whole bunch of the same kinds of Lego. So then you start wanting to build scenes that these things go into. Of course, next thing you know, I'm building Vader's castle, 4 foot tall.
Oh my gosh, I have seen the pictures. It is amazing. Yeah. Really well. I mean, you did a boss scene that was enormous. Like, you've done these huge battle scenes too.
Oh, yeah, and they were great. And then one day we decided, well, how do we get it through a man door? Yeah. So I had to reinvent how I was building. And at the same time, and a great opportunity to pose. I can't talk about that right now, because things are still in the works with that kind of stuff. But great opportunity presented itself. Some doors have opened up. And then I found myself on this convention kick this year. I'm like, well, I got this build finished in October, and I wanted to just kind of see how people reacted to it. So I started putting it in the little conventions around my town, and people were loving it. And, I got a good friend named Maddie, and he's like, dude, go to Brick World. Bring it to Brick World. Yeah. I said, okay, I'm going to Brick World. So I hauled my ass out there with this great build. And, man, they would have been the only one that smoked in the whole place. And they kicked me in the ball, security did, and they were like, no, you can't do that. Indoor vapor.
I saw the on one of your episodes, I saw the actual vapor, So where do you build all this stuff? Because is it in your garage or where are you?
Right here in this room. I'm
Yeah.
sitting in the room. In fact, the camera's sitting right next to the build itself because the first thing I do when I get home is come home and fix it from all the moving.
Yeah. But the smoke aspect was very cool. Like I wish they'd allowed that because it folks should go back through your channel and check that out. It's very cool.
Oh yeah, it was. I've never seen it done before, and I gotta admit, I have a unique way of building. I always question my abilities. I'm a perfectionist, so my okay is really good for other people, and I've had to learn to accept that. My wife had to point that out to me a couple times, and you know, it it is definitely a learning point. Being a part of the Lego community, I've learned a lot in a short period of time, and I still have a lot to learn. That's for sure. I just been one lucky SOP, to be honest with you. It's kind of like how we met. I just
Right.
happened to be standing there hanging out, waiting for Manny to turn around and talk to him. But I don't want to be rude. He's talking to somebody, and he's standing there talking to you. And really, I didn't put two and two together because I kind of stopped paying attention once the gag order kind of took place, and because now you're getting everybody's just hearsay and their input on the situation, and you weren't hearing anything. And I'll be truthfully honest, man, I haven't heard the human aspect of what's going on, nor have you and your wife's true story been told. It's been more about reckless Ben and Brian and all that kind of thing. So when Manny said, "Hey Neil, get your ass over here. You got to meet this couple," I was like, "Okay." I come around the table, and I was quite surprised to meet you, my friend.
Yeah, it's the whole thing has been wild. Like, I've been publishing books since 2013, and like music, it is a grind. Like it is a struggle to get the word out about these authors that I work with and my own books, and then to suddenly, have all these people paying attention, not because of something that I chose, but because we got our store taken away from us. Like that's, it's very strange. And people at Brick World were awesome. Like just coming up, going, I want a selfie. So that was really cool to get to meet everybody. But it does feel very backwards. It's like, you grind away, playing clubs and bars and filling the van with gas and rehearsing and driving out to everywhere and barely making anything, and then suddenly you've got 1,000 people watching your videos of your builds on YouTube. It's got to be like, what? This is the thing that takes off.
To be honest, I've never had thousands of video views. You know what I mean? I'm just some guy out here just trying to make his way in his corner of the sandbox, and and when the door opened up, I got to meet people, and the community's been really great for me too in a lot of different ways.
They really are wonderful. Like this is the best. I think it's Star Wars fandom. Is people are diehard. They are passionate. Sometimes they are over the top about what they hate as much as what they love, and you're like, but the Lego folk kind of moderate that. Like the Lego folk are all, really inclusive and wonderful to one another and encouraging. I haven't seen any negative, snarky stuff with the Lego folk, and so the Lego and Star Wars community, you put them together, and it's very healthy in terms of the passion and the artistry kind of coming together, in a healthy way. I don't know if has that been your experience in general.
Yeah, for the most part, of course, you feel your mental tolls. One of the questions I'd like to ask people is, do you feel like you deserve things when you are here? Do you feel like you build? And the answer is always like, no, man, there's so many phenomenal builders here. And, it doesn't matter who you are. You always feel that way. I know I always do. I feel like, well, man, wow, look at the Halo build that was there. Wow. I mean, so many great builds. And then you look at your own project. And once again, I'm a perfectionist, so I see all the flaws. You know what I mean? I'm that artist in me. And, being a writer, I'm sure you see that too. And, oh, man, I kind of wish I would have restructured that sentence in a specific, better way later on down.
Once it's out in the world and somebody goes, you got a typo on page 212, and you're like, it's out in the world now,
Right. It's not like you can hit edit on Facebook like I can sometimes when I
Yeah.
misspell stuff constantly.
Yes, yes. It is inevitable. Somebody finds a typo, and you're like, 300 pages of work, and yeah, you're right. There's going to be a typo somewhere in there, and sometimes those are created by too many hands in the kitchen. It's
Right.
one editor goes, you should change the sentence in this way, and one editor says you should change it that way, and what ends up in between is, and you're like, if I wish people would understand that there's some collaboration that goes on, and it's not always perfect. And at the same time, that is one of the things that is kind of cool about it is the imperfection. It's like this is not AI. This is human beings creating this. And I think that was one of the great things about seeing these folks Lego constructions is AI can't do that. Like these are human beings at work, and that one little imperfection that's driving you crazy is also proof that somebody needs to come out and see your work at a con, because an AI slop image can't capture what you can create. That was fun for me to see the works and have to like walk around them and see everything. They 2D does not do them a service.
No, to be honest with you, YouTube doesn't either. When you're looking at stuff, like when you're watching channels and stuff, and you're seeing the stuff, and these people are building humongous stuff, but you really can't take it in until you see it up close. And I hear that a lot in stuff I've done. Like right now, I've got the Sith Temple of Malachor, and it smokes. And the kids are like, "Ooh, it's a volcano.
Yeah.
Is that Vader's castle?" No. But they don't know. So, I'm not going to discourage them from that kind of stuff. And, I try to correct them when they ask. But I'm like, yeah, it's a Star Wars volcano. It's really evil when it's part of the bad guy's house. And,
Yeah.
the kids say he ain't going to know no better. But Star Wars fans really do know what it is. And,
Oh yeah.
And then I'd like to add aspects of Easter eggs and just fun things. Like while I was building it, I had Marvin the Martian take the place of Ezra Bridger fighting Vader. And then once I got the second one, I'm like, man, I don't want to take him out of the build. He's kind of cool. So I put him on the side. And that's one of the things that people just peg all day long is that Marvin the Martian. And Batman's another one. I put him in every build. But this time in this build, I put him in a hard to find spot. And so a lot of people have kind of missed him. And, it's just kind of those little things that you add. And
Yep, I love those. I mean, that same thing in my books. Little things where then when I go and do a reading or whatever, I can tell the people who are there, like, check out this thing, and they can look for it. Those create that connection, right? People are like, oh right. Yeah, somebody could walk up and you can say, there's a Batman in there, see if you can find it. Where's Waldo Batman?
Right. Well, usually I like to do a little playing with the crowds. I can't do that at Brick World, but I can do it at Brick Convention. So normally what I do is I buy a bunch of battle packs, and one of the closest guarded secrets that I have for every build until the end is the brick count. I count every brick I put into these builds.
Wow.
And it does take time. And what I do is I set up a sign. For $1, okay, you can have a guess at my brick count. And if you're within 25 of the magic number, I will give you a battle pack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Great idea.
Just engages with the crowd instantly. They're like, oh, okay, now we want to try to figure it out. Now, I have no problem pulling the side of the temple off and showing you what's inside.
Right.
That's how confident I am in that brick count. And people have gotten close. I've given a few away, but that helps me keep going too. So it's give and take with all that. So,
yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. I like that. That's gamify it a little bit for folks who are checking it out. So you've done how many of these cons now?
This year, okay, the Sith Temple has been through the most. It's the first one that it has been more than one. I finished it in October, and I took it to, I think it was Toledo first, just to test it. And then from there, I wanted to go to PA. It was Philadelphia, PA, but I didn't get to go to that. I went for a day to check out Brick Fair and hang out with Manny and my buddy Mike, and check out some of their builds. But then I came back, and then From there, it was Columbus, Cuyahoga Falls for a day, Cincinnati, and then from Cincinnati, I went to Reading, PA, and then from there, it was Chicago. Now I've got Youngstown coming up, Flint, Michigan, and then a little town in West Virginia for barbecue brick bash.
Fun. So, not to put anybody on blast, but which has been the best so far? Which have you enjoyed the most?
So far, the best experience I've had, because it was my first, and I'll be honest, I was completely overwhelmed for the first few days of it, and I still kind of am. And would probably be Brick World Chicago. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Builder's Paradise in Cincinnati in April, it's a good friend of mine that runs that. And so, I like to help promote him, what he's got going on there. He's just kind of getting started, but he does kids' charities. We must have had 500 kids come through there last year, or this year in April. And he does it every April, and it's booked for the next 3 years. So, it's something I'm going to be talking about in the future as well.
Yeah, well, and these things grow. We hope that continues to build. And that was one of the things that impressed me, was there were a handful of charities that were being supported at the Brick World Chicago. These folks are figuring out ways to give back, and so that was cool to see too. They had trying to think about all the charitable organizations that were there.
Yeah, the more you are part of the community, the more you get to know the community, and there's no doubt about that.
So how did you get into the Star Wars side of Star Wars Lego?
Well, like I said, I was always a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Now, when my kids were growing up, and I was buying them Lego, the Star Wars Lego didn't look very good at first. So, I didn't catch an interest until much later. And when I decided to retire, I think I retired from music summer of 2016. And so I had a lot of catching up to do. And then from there I expanded. So, I'm literally sitting in my studio here. I'll give you a kind of a quick look at what we got going on. Dude.
That's amazing.
And then, I kind of started getting into these modular builds, like the Avengers Tower. I've got an LED kit for that I'm getting ready to put in, I can't exactly see what the phone is looking at, so I'm just going to...
Daily Bugle I saw was a great set, too.
Yeah, and then you start getting into the Star Wars stuff here.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
That's amazing.
But, it's that's what I've kind of put together since then.
Yeah. That is incredible. So I'm a Star Wars guy. I'm born in 1977. It was literally the first movie I was ever taken to, as an infant, and I've been a fan for as long as I have a memory of anything. Right? I saw Empire. Empire. I must have been like what? So that would have been 83. So I was like 6. And then Jedi, I was just old enough to... No, wait, Jedi, was Jedi 83? Yeah, it was 77, 80, 83, I think. Something like that. So
yeah, it was early 80s for Empire.
Yeah, so I was, I was so young that it was, soaking into this memory that I could barely, have. And then my folks had a VHS... the VCR, VHS copy of Star Wars. I'm pretty sure in fact, I remember they recorded it off TV. And so it had the commercial breaks in it, and I spent one summer just building Lego and watching it just over and over and over and over, just wore out the tape, right? The Star Wars Episode 4. And so I have, every possible, line memorized, and, the stormtrooper bonking his head, like the little things that, us diehards are like, oh, love that movie. And then, watching it with my son, let's see, my first Father's Day was, I took my son to see Episode 3. So that's where he kind of fell into the timeline, right? As far as the prequels, I remember they gave me I was at the drive-in because you take an infant to the drive-in, right? And they gave me a poster because it was on opening day that said there was Vader and it says "Who's your daddy?" For my first Father's Day. It was very cool, and so that is tucked away somewhere. But I need to find that and get that nicely framed and protected and put that up. But so Star Wars has been my life, and I've watched as the generations. Like every generation finds something to love and something to hate. Based on how old they are, so like, I didn't understand as a kid why the adults didn't like the Ewoks, because of course I loved the Ewoks because I was that age, and then my son's generation loved Jar Jar, and I was like, Jar Jar's the worst, and then this next generation, they think that the stuff in the most recent trilogy that is cool, that are the critics among us are like, it's for kids. Yeah, it's for kids. Like there's some elements that are very much for kids, and I've loved all the TV stuff that they've continued to add to it. I think now I'm old enough that I don't have to be so critical. Like I can watch it and go, maybe this isn't for me, and that's okay. This element, but I if it's Star Wars, I'm going to consume it, and they know they've got me.
Well, yeah, I'm consuming it all too as much as I can. But once again, I wasn't kind of digging the Acolyte very much. I loved, Darth Teeth. He doesn't even really have a name yet, but you get the point. The helmet was great, dude. He was
the design was very cool.
But the witches just kind of killed it for me. And then Book of Boba Fett, where Boba should have been less talkative and more helmet on.
I think Book of Boba Fett should have been. I went back before Grogu and Mandalorian and Grogu and watched like 2 episodes of it. It should have been a couple episodes long, and it was a season of Mandalorian. Like it didn't work as its own thing, But even Mandalorian had hit and miss episodes. There were some that were just great, and there were some where you were like, "This is filler," And that's I still, we build to those moments that, outside of context, are cheesy. In episode 2 when Yoda fights, Yoda actually has his first fight scene. I loved that. I know it's corny, but I've been waiting 20 years to see Yoda fight, and then getting to see Boba Fett on the Rancor was like my childhood. It was so cool. Right. Just because it was cool to see that come together. Not that it was. It was corny, and still I was like, I don't care. Boba Fett is riding a Rancor. That's awesome.
Speak of iconic moments in Star Wars, you have only so many of them. You have when Ahsoka cracks Vader's helmet open. It's a Temple of Malachor, which is what I have. You have when Kanan Jarrus dies. What I'm building next. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, nobody knows.
I haven't reached that yet. Then you have Obi-Wan fighting Vader too, during the show of Obi-Wan. That was a pretty iconic fight there.
Yeah, that was a great fight.
But so far, my favorite so far is Maul, Shadow Lord.
Yes. So, a friend of mine, David Collins. If folks out there don't know the name David Collins, look him up. You're going to go, oh, David Collins. You'll realize, he is. So this guy lived across the hall from me in college. Nicest guy, and then went to work, and he was a music major. And, choir and music production and stuff, and also an actor. And so, we were all kind of curious. What's he going to go on and do? Well, he went to work for Skywalker Sound. So he was doing sound for, in his home state. He's from California. And so, went back home and went to work for Skywalker Sound. Well, he's risen up to the point where he's doing the sound production for a whole bunch of the Star Wars stuff. And I remember years and years ago playing a video game. Was on, I'm trying to remember which console it was on, and then they had like a bonus feature after you beat the game, and they actually talked about how they made the sound, and they're, cutting away from the video game itself. They had film clips of the people talking about it, and there was this guy who used to live across the hall from me explaining how he did the sound effects for it was the one with the clone troopers. It might have been called Clone Troopers game, and so he's now to the point where he's doing the sound, and he did the sound for Maul when Maul's lightsaber ignites. David's idea was to get the actor, whose name I'm blanking on, but who I've actually interacted with thanks to through David. Super nice guy. What's his name? That actor? Do you remember his name? I'm blanking on it.
I too, man. I'm just.
And see, Sam, I know him, as the video game. Yes, Sam. What is it, Sam?
Sam Whitmore.
Yes.
I pronounced it right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what David had him do was just scream as Maul, and then use the sound of his scream in the igniting of his lightsaber. So when his lightsaber lights up, it makes a different sound than any other lightsaber. It sounds like Maul screaming, which is the kind of little touch that is, once you know to listen for it, it's so cool, So I really appreciated the level of detail in Maul, and also like structurally building to the whole last episode being a single fight scene that was an hour long but never felt boring is amazing. Like, how can you have an hour-long fight scene that still is building character? It's not just, lightsabers hitting one another. And all these things being revealed about the characters by the ways that they're interacting and the decisions they're making, and yet it was an iconic fight scene for an hour. That was a great ending.
It killed me knowing that you wanted to hear Vader say something to Maul, but you never got it, and that's what made it so brilliant. Honestly, it just made it that much more impactful, I think, in a lot of times. It really was.
Well, and it means that, I am going to be very excited for a season 2 of Maul. I hope that they continue with it. And I think with Filoni they will. Like, he clearly loves these characters in this world in this way. Like, Filoni's got a path that he wants Star Wars to go, and this is in his wheelhouse. And so I hope we'll get a season 2 of Maul, because there's a lot more they could do with, where does this character go from here? Like, his life story is pretty incredibly awful. Maul has had a bad run, and getting to see how he changes is going to be really interesting.
Well, that's just it. Will he change? Because he really hasn't.
He's changed in that he's gotten more clever. So I saw this video pointing out that when was it Clone Wars where he tries to get Ahsoka on his side, or was that in Rebels?
Yeah. That's Clone Wars season 7. Yeah.
Yeah, and he basically just says, "You know what we need to do? We need to kill Anakin." And she's like, "No, Anakin's my mentor, my friend. I'm not going to kill him." And like, the argument he was making was good. Like, let's not let this guy turn into Darth Vader and, destroy everything. We have like an aligned set of values. I want to get to Palpatine, and you want to not let, your friend turn into the biggest menace in the universe. So let's just kill him. And she's like, no. And so by this new series, he's learned to be sneakier and to be more subtle, and not just come right out and go, you know what you need to do? Leave your mentor and become my Padawan. Like, he doesn't just come right out and say it. And so he is developing as a character, but he's not like doing a WWE heel turn and just like suddenly turning into a good guy. He's turning into a sneakier bad guy, selfish guy, and so it'll be interesting to see how he continues to change. But I appreciate that they're keeping an eye out for characters. Have to evolve. Like, they can't just be the same the whole way through, but they don't have to do a magical heel turn and suddenly become the hero.
Once again, he dies because he's after that revenge. Finally, Obi-Wan takes him out. I mean, it's just
that single-mindedness is ends up being something that is his totally undermines him. So yeah, I'm curious to see where they go with that, and where they go with the Padawan character. Like, does she become? How much does she become like Maul? And we're going to get to see that.
Darth Talon,
right? Because she's got every reason to hate the Sith and hate the Jedi. Like she will have a reason to to come to resent that the Jedi failed her so much. So,
right?
What does that make?
Have you ever seen your minifigure? No.
No.
Let me just reach into the Sith temple here.
And so do we think that is her?
This is Darth Talon now. This is the Legends. I've had her for close to 8 years now at this point. But whether they turn her, the girl that Maul has, Devin, into her or not, will yet to be seen. So I think there's a little truth to Legends.
Folks who are kind of new to the changes that have gone on with Star Wars over the last few years, there was a whole lot of stuff that they decided was no longer canon, so that they could kind of reset a little bit, and they just made it Legends. But now they're able to mine that and kind of go back through and go, do we want to have Darth Talon? Do we want to have Mara Jade? Do we want, we get to decide what we, pluck from that. And so that will be interesting to see what they choose to pick. What era was she in the Legends?
She would have been in the future. She would have been part of the Rule of One. So Darth Krayt, I believe, was the area she's in, where the Sith had 2 different color eyes. I believe, son of a Tusken. Something happened on Tatooine that Maul debased him, and that's when he went from being part of a Tusken tribe to a Sith Lord at one.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot they could play with there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So they're kind of plucking her out. George had a vision of all it. And honestly, when they killed off Snoke, and then you killed off Palpatine, what do you do at this point? You can't. You need to progress your line of Sith now somehow, some way, and Devin might be the answer to that problem. So.
Well, I always felt like the choice to kill off Maul in Episode 1 was a mistake, because that character would have been a really great through line to Grievous. Replace Grievous with Maul, right? In Episode 2, like, okay, we see this character build. And instead, they've done this kind of retcon to bring him back from the dead. But we didn't need Grievous. That would have been a perfect Maul placement. I don't know that Maul has any big Maul or Grievous lovers. I don't think there are Grievous fans out there. Whereas, if Maul could have survived and then had another confrontation, but who knows? Maybe then we wouldn't have gotten all the great Maul content we've gotten this way. So, it worked out.
Without the 3 of those characters, there's a little bit of Dooku, a little bit of Maul, and a little Vader. In fact, when they were creating the prequels, that's how they got the 3 characters, which the 3 faces of Vader.
Yeah. This idea of this is what you will become. You've had a warning. You're going to become this kind of monster.
And even Lucas admits that killing off Maul was kind of a mistake in the long run afterwards. But, I think they cleverly brought him back. But once again, you've never seen the dude eat. You don't know if he pees or poops. How does he stay in his human half? Because, he's organic in some ways, so he's got to consume something. But, I get it's a fantasy, but still, he's got to mechanics. What's going on?
Yeah, well, and maybe that's something they can address in the next season. Is we just saw his leg is damaged. Folks who've not seen Maul, sorry, minor spoiler, but maybe we can see him becoming more and more and more technological, and that progression, like he is becoming more robotic over time, because that seems to be the way the not the Sith themselves, but the Sith kind of failures progress. They become more and more robotic as they go. So maybe we'll get to see some of that movement with him too.
All right, my friends, I think we're going to get down to the end here. And I'll be honest, Man, I've had a lot of fun here today, man. I know that our last time. We're going to have to continue this conversation another day.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it has been great to talk to you. Great to get to hang, and I'm glad we ran into one another at Brick World.
Sure.
And we'll toss this up on both our channels. So if whichever channel you're seeing this on, subscribe on the other one.
Yeah, for sure, man. Show your support and show your love. So, of course, if you like this kind of content, go ahead and hit that like button. It lets us know we did a good job. Of course, you got a good idea, want us to cover a topic, just want to shoot the shit, just go ahead and put that down in the comments below. And we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can, man. And of course, smash that subscribe button. It takes you a mere half second. For me, and I know for Benjamin, it does really mean an awful lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because we both got a lot going on. You both have an idea of our stories. And we're just a couple of Star Wars fans out here. So,
yeah.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
And minifigs thing continues. We'll be in touch because who knows where this could go from here. So now you've got a contact person when you're like, what is going on next?
Right.
Reach out and we'll keep keep in contact about that too.
Sure, for sure, man. So definitely I'll be reaching out to you soon. Regular. Great conversation. I love talking Star Wars, love talking Lego. I know you do. Like I said, we all got things going on in our lives that sometimes we need to have fun talking about. So,
yes, exactly. Take care. This was fun.
All right, you too, man. Peace.
See ya. And then we'll